Hello, everyone. For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. Thanks for joining us on this afternoon from Caracas. To begin, the UN Security Council will have a special meeting to discuss the upsurge in violence between Israelis and Palestinians that has left at least 36 people dead over the past 2 weeks. Now, the meeting is set to be held later today and was requested by Council Member Jordan. Israel deployed more troops to the border with Gaza, where the ruling Palestinian group Hamas has called for Day of Rage demonstrations, seeking to keep young protesters away. Jerusalem police barred men under 40 from attending the main weekly prayers at the Flashpoint Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, earlier today, a Palestinian man who was wearing a yellow press vest was shot and killed in the occupied West Bank by Israeli forces after he stabbed and wounded a soldier. Israeli forces have also increased their presence in Nablus after Palestinians torched Joseph's tomb, a shrine revered by Muslims and Jews. The arson came as Palestinian leaders had called for a Friday of revolution to protest the increasing violence in the region. President Mahmoud Abbas condemned the attack and promised an investigation. The tomb is located in the Palestinian refugee camp Balata in Nablus, and it has been the scene of recurrent violence between Israelis and Palestinians. It was under Palestinian control and could only be visited by Israelis with an IDF escort. And clashes continue to engulf much of the occupied Palestinian territory as a variety of groups supported the so-called call for a day of rage. So far today, at least 2 Palestinians have been killed and a dozen others have been injured after Israeli forces opened fire on protesters in Gaza.
We are in the streets to defend our homeland. We are here to do everything in memory of our martyrs who died. We are willing to sacrifice our blood for the homeland, Jerusalem, and Al-Aqsa Mosque. We will defend them by all means.
The brigades are announcing a state of general outrage by its members, and it stresses that it's not bound by any peace agreement, and it will launch attacks against the occupation's entity as a reaction to its crimes. And it calls on its members in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and Nidal al-Maudi group to launch attacks in the heart of the aggressive entity.
And we're joined on the line now from Gaza by Lana Shaheen. She is a reporter with Telesur's sister channel, Al Majadin. Thanks so much for joining us. Lana, just bringing us up to date, if you will, with the latest developments there on what is being called a day of rage, as the Palestinians are calling it that.
Yes, right now, the evening, right now in the Gaza Strip, the situation is a little bit calm, actually. But after a very long day of this, the day of anger of the young people who went to the fence with the borders with the Israelis. 2 were martyred, 2 were killed by the Israeli live bullets, and 100 were injured by live bullets and also by rubber bullets and also by inhaling gas. But right now the situation is a little bit calm. The Gazans here, they are supporting Jerusalem. They want this intifada in Jerusalem to continue, but on the other side, actually, because Gaza witnessed 3 wars during the last 6 years by the Israeli occupation forces. Here, the politicians and also the Palestinian people, the ordinary people, they don't prefer to interfere with the military or firing rockets from Gaza at the Israelis for many reasons, actually, because Gaza is very tired because of the siege and because of the last war. And the second thing, they don't want the whole world to just look at Gaza and to forget what's going on there in Jerusalem and the West Bank, because according to politicians here and also according to the Palestinian factions, they said that Israel, the goal of Israel, the aim of Israel is to launch a military operation against the Gaza Strip in order to get out of the dilemma Israel right now is facing at Jerusalem and also in the West Bank. So the goal of Israel, the Palestinian factions here, they are just watching what is the next step for this as all the Palestinian factions here and also the people, they are calling it al-intifada. Gaza is suffering, even also for the hospitals. They have this emergency appeal that they don't have medicine. This is due also to the siege imposed on Gaza over 8 years ago. The Israeli occupation authorities, actually, they imposed very harmful siege on Gaza, and for the health sector, also for the economic, Gaza is very deteriorating in economy, not exporting. Israel doesn't allow the occupation, doesn't allow the Gaza Strip to export its goods out of the Gaza Strip. Also, with Rafah border closed by the Egyptian authorities, this is adding, as we said, salt on the entries, because people, they are very tired here in Gaza Strip. They are suffering a lot and a lot. But with all what's going on in Jerusalem and the West Bank, Gaza is standing side by side, supporting them. During only just 1 week, 14 people were killed and over 400 persons were injured, actually, by the Israeli occupation forces. So this is a good proof that Gaza is standing and supporting what's going on in Jerusalem and the West Bank.
All right, Lana Shaheen with our sister station there, joining us from Gaza. Thanks so much for the latest. Moving on now, we go to Latin America. Panama's former president, Ricardo Martinelli, faces a possible 21 years in jail for political espionage. Now, Martinelli, who is now a member of the Central American Parliament, is accused of using public funds to tap telephones, read messages, and having activists, politicians, union members, and other civil groups followed while in office from 2009 to 2014. For this, he also used National Security Council employees. The former president faces 4 charges in his country, where he has not been seen since January this year, when he left for an event in Guatemala. Local media say he could be living in Miami. And another former president, Guatemalan Otto Pérez Molina, currently in jail, has accused the United States of intervening in his country and coercing a UN investigative group to involve him in a corruption scandal. Pérez sent a letter to the CELAC's pro temp head, President of Ecuador, Rafael Correa, asking him to intervene in the case. Now, in April, a major corruption scheme was unveiled, and it led to massive protests and the arrests of various officials. Pérez's lawyer said his guilt has not been proven, and yet they are treating him as a confirmed criminal.
And in the political portion, the president highlights that this turned out to be a retaliation, lamentably, by the government of the United States to the CICIG, possibly because the president during his time did not accept certain policies imposed by the interests of the United States.
The Venezuelan political opposition, has rejected an agreement for all parties to respect the outcome of next December's parliamentary elections. The National Electoral Council asked all the candidates participating in the elections to sign the document, explaining it as one of the guarantees in this year's process. Its president added that the participation of all political parties throughout the country is necessary to ensure elections.
We have signed this agreement without any conditions. We have not imposed any conditions on the National Electoral Council, and we will not allow for anyone to set conditions on the signing of this agreement. This is an agreement which absolutely follows the Constitution.
The Venezuelan opposition leader Manuel Rosales, who fled the country after being accused of corruption in 2009, was arrested on Thursday when he returned ahead of elections here. Rosales is the founder of center-right party A New Time. He is accused of stealing public money when he was Zulia's governor, that's the state of Zulia, between 2000 and 2008. He fled the country in March 2009 ahead of a court hearing to decide whether he should be jailed pending trial. He was mayor of Zulia's capital, Maracaibo, at the time, a post now held by his wife. Nicolás Maduro, the president, has announced the 4th minimum wage increase this year. The 30% rise to the salary and food stamps will come into effect November 1st. The president says the aim is to protect salaries and maintain increases above the inflation rate. Maduro took the opportunity to criticize the right-wing opposition for violating the Constitution by negotiating the country's resources with the International Monetary Fund, which is controlled by the United States, who wants to create privileged conditions for their extractive multinational companies.
Bueno, yo he decidido para proteger el salario del último trimestre del año.
I have decided that in order to protect the minimum wage this last quarter of 2015 and to protect the salary of our beloved workers class from capitalist thieves, I have decreed a minimum wage increase of 30% and an increase to the subsidized meal ticket.
Since Mexico launched its so-called war on drugs in 2006, the country's death toll, violence, and insecurity has increased dramatically, with denouncements by rights organizations that the country's security forces commit human rights abuses or are unable to confront the waves of violence. The private security industry is filling that void. But for whom? Our correspondent Clayton Kahn looks into that question.
While this may look like a luxury car repair shop, it is actually an armor plating facility here in Mexico City, refurbishing approximately 800 vehicles a year and forming part of a growing private security industry.
We expect to have a 5% increase in our sales this year, which is a dip from comparison to previous years, which was higher due to the problems of security that we are living through these past several years.
According to official statistics, there are currently 450,000 registered private security officers in comparison to the 367,000 police in Mexico. Private security executives attribute the exponential growth of the industry to a lack of confidence in public security that the state has been unable to guarantee.
The right to life, physical integrity, is a fundamental right, and the reality is that the state does not provide that. That is why in 4 years there are 20,000 deaths, and the past year it has reached 27,000.
Meanwhile, analysts echo the sentiment. They underscore that this $240 billion industry operates in a public security void that reflects an incapacity or unwillingness to procure justice.
Impunity in Mexico is around 98% of registered crimes. That is, we have 2% of crimes that are investigated, taken to a judge, and carried out to judicial conclusion.
However, former public security officials say that this mixture of weak public security with the growth of private companies does not guarantee benefits for the public on a whole.
With this institutional weakness, the true power that be, whether it's illegal, such a corporation, or illegal, such as organized crime groups, take control of the state apparatus for their own ends that are not public ends.
And academics thus say the incentive to guarantee safety and one's physical integrity shifts from a basic right to rather the highest bidder. Clayton Kahn, Telesur, Mexico City.
Part of the violence that spreads in Mexico are the forced disappearances. Over 25,000 people have gone missing in the last 9 years. The government is now sending a bill to the Congress that proposes up to 100 years for the criminals. We go back now to Clayton Kahn.
It was declared yesterday by Mexico's Subsecretary in Human Rights for the Office of the Attorney General, Eber Torres, that the executive office is to send to the country's Senate a legislative proposal that will see the crime of forced disappearances facing a maximum sentence of 100 years in prison and a minimum of 30. Now, the Senate, which is currently debating nationwide legislation for public servants who participate in the kidnapping or disappearance of persons, is to receive the proposal in the coming days, which is reportedly to include 5 degrees of the crime, depending on the level of the public servant, the degree of participation, and intentionality. Now, in the wake of the attack and forced disappearance of the 43 Ayotzinapa students in September 26th of 2014, which, as we know, continues to be unsolved, the focus by the Mexican public, national and international rights organizations, has fallen squarely on the crime of forced disappearances, which is considered to be widespread and left in impunity. Now, the authorities have been forced to buckle under this pressure to propose this legislation that will officially criminalize the act, which at this point, only a handful of states have some kind of legal measures against the crime. This is Clayton Kahn reporting for Telesur here in Mexico City.
We go now to Sao Paulo, Brazil, where teachers and students protested the state's educational reform, for which schools will no longer provide all levels of education in the same building. 150 schools are expected to close with the reform, which is scheduled to come into force next year. Protesters there estimate that this will force thousands of students to relocate, and many workers in the education system will lose their jobs. A new call for "Do Not Close My School" action has been made for next week. Farmers within the Caribbean community, CARICOM, are hoping that the 15-country bloc's push for self-sufficiency in food production will result in greater help for those who work the land. CARICOM's trade and agricultural officials met last week and spoke of the need for full implementation of the Caribbean food and agriculture policy at a time when rising food import bills are threatening food security.
Anthony Matherin knows the ups and downs of the banana industry. The 48-year-old farmer has been toiling the land since he was 15. He is aware that CARICOM governments want to do more to increase production figures in order to feed their populations. At present, the region spends over $4 billion a year on food imports. Matherin agrees with the agricultural experts who say that the Caribbean has the capacity to reduce imports and boost local food production. But he says greater support for farmers is needed. Like him, many farmers are facing serious hardship and are considering alternative work.
When the banana industry was booming, everybody would get a little work, you know, right? Go, draw their little money, right? Sometimes the farmer has about 3-4 people, right, working with him. And right now the farmer cannot do it because of what he's getting, right? Seeing well what he's getting is not even enough, right, to feed his family, you know. And I'm seeing right now, if we have to go say so, it's best farmer just leave banana.
Other farmers say access to markets is their main area of concern. One senior CARICOM official says that what the region needs now are agricultural strategies to increase production and open up access to regional and global markets.
For the agriculture sector to become dynamic and competitive as a region, we need to employ strategies at both the macro and micro levels through partnership between the public sector, the private sector, and the trade union movement. We have to come to the realization that no single group can go it alone, and that collaboration is not a choice, but an imperative.
Challenge for CARICOM is to develop a comprehensive agriculture strategy, one that invests in more efficient food production systems, import substitution, and consumer education. For farmers, this strategy cannot come soon enough. Alison Kentish, Telesur, St. Lucia.
We go back to live now to Alison Kentish for another subject now. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro started this Friday a trip to several countries in the Caribbean, and we're joined now by Alison. She's in St. Lucia. Alison, good to see you there. Just tell us what countries Maduro will visit and what's the objective here. Why is he visiting the Caribbean?
Hi, good afternoon to all our viewers. Well, the stage is set for President Maduro's visit to St. Lucia tomorrow, Saturday. And the excitement is in the air, and all around, people are speaking about the much-anticipated visit. It will be President Maduro's very first visit to St. Lucia, so the sense of anticipation is truly evident all across the country. The president is expected to hold bilateral talks with St. Lucia's Prime Minister, Dr. Kenny Anthony, and a team of 40 representatives from Venezuela arrived here in St. Lucia yesterday to prepare for President Maduro's arrival. And President Maduro has been visiting a number of Caribbean communities, that's CARICOM countries. CARICOM is a bloc of 15 Caribbean countries. And he has been to St. Kitts and Nevis and Dominica recently, and he's expected to also visit St. Vincent and the Grenadines at a date to be announced. And Venezuela and St. Lucia established diplomatic relations in 1979, and they share close ties. Government officials in St. Lucia have been celebrating the importance of ALBA and PetroCaribe funded projects here in St. Lucia. They say those projects have transformed sectors such as infrastructure and, of course, transformed the lives of average St. Lucians. So people in the Caribbean are getting a sense that this is a new era of relations and closeness between Latin America and the Caribbean. We haven't witnessed this level of closeness before, and the trips like President Maduro's can only bring people even closer together. So the excitement is building for President Maduro's visit, and the final preparations are being put in place for this historic occasion.
Just reporting on President Maduro's visit to the Caribbean, and we're seeing his map there on the screen of the countries and the places he will visit. Allison, thanks so much. Moving on now, today is World Food Day, an initiative where people from around the world come together to declare their commitment to eradicate hunger in our lifetime. We have more details when we get back. Stay with us. That have marked the course of history. Productions designed in the English language and made for the English-speaking world. This is Documentary. Watch it on telesur.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there.
Wherever the news, you'll be there.
Russian airstrikes aimed at assisting Syrian President Bashar al-Assad have taken a major toll on civilian areas across the provinces of Homs and Aleppo. Now, according to state TV, Syrian troops and their allies, backed by Russian jets, reportedly targeted a long-held and strategic enclave of opposition to Assad. UK-based group the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said at least 5 civilians and 6 insurgents had been killed in Ter Mala, about 3 miles north of the city of Homs. However, another media report says that at least 80 civilians had been killed, including all of the members of 2 families. Turkey has confirmed its warplane shot down an unidentified drone after it came almost 2 miles into Turkish airspace near Syria. Washington reportedly suspects Russia, but Moscow said all of its planes in Syria had safely returned to base.
We already shared the information we have with the public. As you know, as a requirement of our rules of engagement, Turkish armed forces have warned foreign elements about violating Turkish airspace. And after several warnings, if these foreign elements do not comply these warnings, they are shot down. According to the information we have, unidentified aircrafts were shot down after violating Turkish airspace. The Turkish armed forces will release further information once we have more information.
The European Union leaders announced a deal aimed at halting the flow of refugees arriving in the continent. Now, this year, over 600,000 refugees have fled violence and poverty in their countries. The EU decided that refugees who are in Turkey are to remain there. The Turkish government apparently agrees with the decision, but wants over $3 billion to deal with the refugee crisis. The EU also agreed to increase border security and to expand funding for deportations of people they consider not to be refugees.
Tonight, leaders took some important decisions that will help secure the union's external borders.
NGO Doctors Without Borders said that on Thursday, a U.S. tank forced its way through the gates of the Afghan hospital that was bombed by a U.S. airstrike on October 3rd. As a result, questions have been raised on whether or not this intrusion was a deliberate attempt to destroy evidence in a possible war crime inquiry. The medical group had been told that they would be given a notice before each step of the investigation that involved MSF's personnel and assets. The move was a clear agreement of that, a clear breach rather of that agreement. October 16th is World Food Day. This year, the day is dedicated to social protection and agriculture breaking the bonds for rural poverty. 1 out of every 9 people does not get enough nutritious food to eat every single day. 800 million people suffer from chronic hunger, and almost 1 billion remain trapped in extreme poverty. However, some achievements have been reached. The share of people in developing regions who live in extreme poverty has fallen significantly from 43% in 1990 to just 17% in 2015. 72 out of the 129 countries monitored by the UN's Food and Agricultural Organization have achieved the Millennium Development Goal target of having the prevalence of undernourishment in their populations by 2015. And now global lenders have committed to a new set of sustainable development goals. In Peru, more than 4,000 women were victims of sexual violence during an armed conflict between the year 1980 and 2000. Even though 25 years have passed since some of these cases, there are no convictions for those crimes. The English Football Association has suspended its support for Michel Platini in his bid to become the president of FIFA. Following a UEFA meeting on Thursday, the FA made the decision to suspend support for former France captain and manager after learning more information about Platini's corruption case. They added that this is their stance until the legal process has been concluded and the position is clear. On Thursday, U.S. President Barack Obama welcomed a Cuban band along with the Cuban ambassador to the White House. The event took place on the last day of National Hispanic Heritage Month in the United States and coincided with some other events there. We're seeing the video there of the band. It is the Buena Vista Social Club. You have probably heard of them. It's a group, an older group of musicians. They perform for the crowd, and in their repertoire, they included classics such as Candela. That's what we're covering on this Friday afternoon here from Caracas. We have plenty more on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend.